The Thames glittered under the moonlight. It was a cold night, but beautiful. The city lights reflected on the water, twinkling like distant stars. John sat by the riverbank, his shoulders slumped. Work had been exhausting. The pub hadn't helped much either, though the ale had dulled the sharp edges of the day. Loneliness gnawed at him. He stared at the moon, a pale disk in the vast darkness. John closed his eyes just for a moment. The gentle lapping of the river against the stone was soothing. He could almost forget the city noises, the weight of his worries. The night air was cool against his skin. He felt himself drifting, the moon a beacon in the growing darkness behind his eyelids. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep. When he opened his eyes, the moon was hidden behind clouds. A biting wind chilled him to the bone. The city lights seemed to have dimmed, swallowed by a creeping fog. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the haze of his sleep. John scrambled to his feet, suddenly very awake. His heart pounded in his chest. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy, charged with an unknown energy. The lapping of the river seemed louder now, more insistent. He looked around, but the fog obscured everything. He could barely see his own hand in front of his face. He stumbled back, fear clawing at his throat. Something was moving in the water, something large. John stared into the murky depths, his breath catching in his chest. The surface of the water broke, sending ripples outwards. A hand emerged, but it wasn't a human hand. It was scaly, reptilian. Long, sharp claws glinted in the dim light. John cried out, a strangled sound lost in the fog. He turned to run, but his feet seemed rooted to the spot. Terror froze him in place. He watched, helpless, as the creature rose from the water. It was vaguely humanoid, but its skin glistened with slime. Its eyes, yellow and reptilian, fixed on him with chilling hunger. John closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable. But the attack never came. Instead, he heard a sharp voice cut through the fog. "Get back!" it commanded. John opened his eyes. Standing between him and the creature was a figure shrouded in shadow. The figure held up a hand and a bright light flared. The creature hissed, recoiling from the light. It sank back beneath the surface of the Thames with a splash, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. John stared at the spot where the creature had been, his heart still pounding. He turned to face his savior, but the fog obscured their features. "Who are you?" John stammered, his voice trembling. The figure chuckled, a low, throaty sound. "Someone you don't need to worry about," they said. Their voice, though kind, sent shivers down John's spine. "But that thing—" John pointed a shaking finger at the water. "What was that?" The figure stepped closer, their face still hidden in shadow. "Moon goblins," they whispered. "They're drawn to the city, drawn to the river, especially on nights like this." John shivered. Moon goblins. The name itself sounded like a nightmare. "But why?" he asked. "Why me?" The figure placed a hand on his shoulder, their touch surprisingly gentle. "Some things," they said, "are best left unknown." And with that, they melted away into the fog, disappearing as if they were never there. John stood alone on the riverbank, the silence broken only by the gentle lapping of the Thames. The fog began to recede, revealing the city lights once more. The moon, however, remained hidden behind the clouds. John knew deep down that he would never forget this night, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that this was only the beginning. He had glimpsed a world hidden beneath the surface of his own, a world of moon goblins and shadowy figures, and he knew with a growing sense of dread and fascination that he had to know more.